it with the kind of common sense, step-by-step reforms that will actually lower costs, That's what Kentuckians want. That's what Americans want. And anybody who actually listened to their constituents last month already knows what I just said. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from New Mexico.
Mr. President, I would ask to vitiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise today, I'm going to get into the discussion about amendments that I'm offering to the Shaheen-Portman bill. But I've been watching what's been happening on the floor, and I don't understand this, because I've got some amendments that I'm working on that are bipartisan. I know that there have been major endorsements of this bill from the Business Roundtable to the Chamber to many others. And what we're seeing here is a very targeted attack from the other side to prevent all of these bipartisan amendments from coming forward. So all the debate this week has been good on this bill, but we aren't getting our amendments up. We're not having the ability to debate them, and that is just very, very unfortunate. So I'm one of the ones here that's going to be talking about amendments that I think I've been reaching out and I think can be very bipartisan, but we're being blocked, and that's just very, very unfortunate. So I rise today to discuss several amendments to the Energy Savings and Industrial Competitiveness Act. First, I want to thank Senator Shaheen and Portman for working on this important legislation, for working on it so long and being so diligent about it. Energy efficiency is critical for our future, and this bill takes us in the right direction. There are a few areas where I think we need to take additional steps. My first amendment connects energy and water efficiency. Many people do not realize that water efficiency is energy efficiency. 3 to 4% of our national electricity consumption is for water and wastewater services each year. That's about 5 to 6 billion kilowatts and $4 billion a year in costs. That is a lot of energy, and it's a lot of money. To talk to the water management professionals in your state, if you do that, they will tell you that these costs add up quickly. The energy use nexus is one that cannot be ignored. The Energy Committee has been engaged in the water energy nexus for some time, both under Senator Bingaman and continuing under Senator Wyden's leadership. And I know the President and presiding officer is on Senator Wyden's committee. He's very interested in this, and you've, Senator Wyden, I think, done a very good job in terms of trying to pull all this together. Water and wastewater utilities are typically the largest consumers of energy in towns and cities, often accounting for 30 to 40% of total energy consumed. As ratepayers, we all pay those bills. And inefficient systems don't just cost money, they waste huge amounts of water. As much as $6 billion per year is lost. Let me repeat that. 6 billion gallons of water a year wasted. That is enough water to serve 10 of the largest cities in this country, or the entire state of California. To continue this practice while the Southwest and other regions are facing extreme drought is ridiculous. And in some of our communities, it's downright dangerous. We can do better, and we have to. Efficiency of U.S. water and wastewater pumping facilities is about 55%. But for a new, well-designed pumping facility, it's 80%. Consider this, if water and wastewater utilities could reduce energy use by just 10%, it would save about $400 million annually. My amendment calls for a $15 million to support smart water system pilot projects, supporting innovation and the kind of investments today that will pay off tomorrow. Our amendment is fully offset. This is not about adding costs. It's about reducing the costs to ratepayers. So I believe this amendment is worthy of bipartisan support. We have support from almost every major water utility association and from the technology industry. It should be included on any amendment list, especially any bipartisan amendment list. And then as I'm talking about, the blocking is going on from the other side of the aisle to prevent good bipartisan amendments from coming forward. Putting innovation to work in 3 to 5 cities is a first step. The program will be jointly managed by the Department of Energy and the EPA to create incentives for public-private partnerships, lowering the cost of innovation, applying best practices to the public and private sectors, and to eventually benefit communities across the entire country. I also plan to introduce a second, more ambitious amendment to improve the water efficiency of our homes, to save water and to lower costs for American families. The average family of 4 in our country uses 400 gallons of water every day. My amendment will provide funds to states, local government, and utilities to implement incentives and rebates for customers to purchase water-efficient products and landscaping. In addition, the amendment will authorize the EPA Water Sense program, similar to the Energy Star program, to enable Water Sense to improve and expand its labeling system for water-efficient appliances, plumbing fixtures, and landscaping in new homes. My amendment also establishes a grant program called Blue Bank, providing water and sewer utilities with grants for important investments in climate change adaptation, including advanced water supply management, modification of infrastructure, improved planning, and water efficiency and reuse. Finally, I will offer an amendment for a renewable electricity standard to get to 25% renewable electricity by 2025. The first legislation I introduced as a U.S. Senator was to create a national RES. The time is right to put this idea back on the table. Renewables are a crucial part of our energy mix. A national RES will create thousands of jobs that cannot be outsourced and will help revitalize rural America. It has worked in over half the states in the country by guaranteeing a market for wind and sun and other clean energy sources. Renewable energy is a key partner of energy efficiency in a modern energy system. They are often installed side by side, increasing the payback savings and reducing emissions and fighting climate change. Our nation needs a do-it-all, do-it-right energy policy to address global climate change, to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Those are the big threats, but also a big opportunity. We can create a clean energy economy that leads the world in producing the jobs of the future. Again, I want to thank my colleagues, Senator Shaheen and Senator Portman, for their work, and I look forward to continued bipartisan efforts as we address the energy needs of our country. And I would just say to Senator Shaheen and to Senator Wyden, I find it very, very unfortunate that we're in a position now where so many members have come to the floor to offer bipartisan amendments, and you have been stopped in your tracks from moving this bill forward and voting on those amendments and dealing with them. However, you know, let the Senate work its will. But once again, I know you're trying to cut through that, but I wish that the other side of the aisle would let us proceed on the bipartisan amendments and move forward. Thank you, and I see Senator Wyden is here on the floor.
Mr. President,
I just want to thank Senator Udall for steering the Senate towards a very sensible, important area. Last year, it's my understanding, we had the worst drought in our country's history since the Dust Bowl. So we are looking at some serious, serious drought issues in the days ahead. And what you are suggesting is that we start very modestly. You've got some voluntary efforts. These are not mandatory, not run from Washington, one-size-fits-all leviathans that would inflict pain and trauma on local communities. They're voluntary. They're about saving water, which is about saving energy. In our part of the world, the West, this is especially important. But I think what we saw last year with these extraordinary drought conditions, this is something that isn't going to go away. So Senator Murkowski and I have already begun to look at these issues, and I'll just say for myself that I'm looking forward very closely to working with you on these issues, and I'm very hopeful that we can get your amendment up and we can work out some way to advance this idea, because water is, frankly, an issue that's gotten short shrift. It's gotten short shrift in the West, but it's gotten short shrift in terms of our policy debates, and I think you are clearly starting us in the right direction, and I look forward to working closely with you.
Senator from New Hampshire.
Thank you. Before the senator from New Mexico leaves, I just wanted to also commend him for his work. I haven't seen the amendment that you would like to offer, and like you, I'm so disappointed that you're not able to offer that right now, that it's being held up on an unrelated issue. But as you point out, there is a clear nexus between water and energy use. I remember visiting the wastewater treatment plant in North Conway, New Hampshire, and being told that 4% of our energy use in the country is with wastewater treatment. And I've seen that at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, where they do such great work on Los Angeles-class and Virginia-class submarines that as they have cut back their energy use, they've also been able to cut back their use of water in a way that has provided for tens of thousands of gallons in savings in water, as well as tremendous savings in energy use. So this is a connection that we all ought to be making as we look at our energy use in the future, and I really appreciate your working on this amendment, your interest in offering it, and I certainly hope that we're going to get to the point here where we can actually debate the amendments that people are bringing to the floor, because we've got so much bipartisan support for not only the bill, but for so many amendments. I appreciate my colleague from Ohio, Senator Portman, his partnership in working on this legislation. This is a win-win-win, and we really need to move this forward. Thank you.
The senator from New Mexico.
And let me thank Senator Shaheen and Senator Wyden, and I see Senator Portman is on the floor too, and I just want to say to Senator Portman, the partnership that you two have developed has been incredibly impressive, and I know how hard you've worked on this bill, and really our intent here, as many of you want to try to improve it. We want to try to bring forward bipartisan amendments, and so I hope we can all work together to make sure that whatever roadblocks and objections are out there, that we can deal with this bill in a way where the bipartisan amendments can be voted on, we can move the bill along, and let the Senate work its will, because this is the kind of bill that I believe can pass in the House of Representatives, because you two have worked so hard over the last couple of years on this. So I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Thank you. I understand where we are. I would make the following comments to my colleagues who have not been here quite as long as I have. Regular order before you got here was you can offer any amendment on any bill anytime you want it. And since we've had the leadership that we've had, we've changed that, and now we consider it abnormal that somebody wants to address a critical issue in our country on a bill, and we find that distasteful. And I would just remind you that 92% of the people in this country think everybody involved in the FEHPB that's working for the federal government ought to be in the exchanges. And to not allow a vote on an amendment is cowardly, because it says I don't want to vote on that issue. So there's a very big difference from what we've heard said and what reality has been until 2006, the end of 2006, and the starting of the Congress in 2007. And I think it's important. I have several amendments to this bill, several that I think it will make it much more compliant with what the Constitution says, and I won't offer them today until this logjam of lack of minority rights is relieved. But I do have some comments, and part of the assumption, the intention of this bill is good. I appreciate what Senator Shaheen and Senator Portman have done. But I have some real differences of opinion about the effectiveness and the command and control centered in Washington that comes about through this bill. And if you actually read this little book called the U.S. Constitution, we're going down the same path again that says Washington knows best. Because in this bill, the Secretary is going to determine final plans, final efficiency standards. Not the standards groups that are out there, because the Secretary will have to do it. So my hope is that we can get back to offering amendments on this, all the amendments that need to be offered, whether it's germane to the bill or not, as the Senate functioned for over 200 years. There should not be an issue that we can't debate and have an amendment on in the Senate at any time. That's the history of the Senate. That's what makes it a great body. That's what allows our republic, our constitutional republic, to function. So I would say I'm disappointed that the majority leader does not want to have a vote on something that 92% of the people in this country agree with, and that he's not allowing Senator Vitter to have his amendment to address an issue that people are really burned up over. Creating something better for us than what the average American can get. It's a tin ear. We do not pay attention to the American public at our own risk. So I won't spend any more time. I have several amendments. I will try to offer them the first part of next week, and I yield the floor.
Mr. President. Senator from Ohio.
First, I want to thank my colleague from Oklahoma. He does have some amendments, and we're looking forward to them. We've talked about this bill and some of his amendments, and I think you're going to find it's a good debate, and some of the amendments will be helpful to the legislation. We have tried, as you know, in this legislation to focus on exactly what my friend from Oklahoma talked about, which is to make sure we are not putting new mandates in the private sector. There are none in this legislation, none. We do have some mandates on the federal government, and it basically asks the federal government to practice what it preaches. Being the biggest user of energy, not just in the country but in the world, we believe the federal government can do a lot better. And so things like requiring the federal government to use some efficiency standards and some of the best practices saves all of us as taxpayers money. It's the right thing to do for taxpayers. It's also the right thing to do for energy efficiency and for our environment. So we are not focused on mandates. In fact, we are explicitly focused on only incentives, only best practices. There are lots of amendments that will be offered here on the floor that will try to add some mandates. And as a group, we don't think that's the way to go. So just to be clear on that, also in terms of the development of building efficiency standards, it is not the Secretary who will establish them. The Secretary provides the technical assistance, but the authority is preserved actually in the private standard-making bodies, and I think that's appropriate. So we've gone out of our way to make this a voluntary bill, not a mandate bill. We've gone out of our way to ensure that this is responsive to what we're hearing out there among the business community, which is they're looking for better research technology, looking for some deployable technologies to be able to improve their efficiency, to make them more competitive with their global competitors. Because around the world, other companies are competing with our companies in Ohio or in the other states represented in this great body. And what we find is we're not going to want to compete on labor rates with developing countries. We don't want to lower our standards here. Where we can compete are in things like the energy input into our manufacturing process. We're spending more than we have to because we're not as efficient as other countries, even some emerging economies, much less developed economies. And so that's part of the reason that the National Association of Manufacturers, the Chamber of Commerce, the Ohio manufacturers are supporting this legislation strongly. Over 200 businesses are supporting it because they believe this will help them to be able to compete and win in the global marketplace. By the way, the Chamber of Commerce agreed today that they were going to key vote this legislation. They're strongly in support of it. And I appreciate that, and I think that will help to make the point that this is not about Washington knows best. This is about ensuring that people have the information, the transparency, the technology, the research to be able to have a true all-of-the-above energy strategy. Yes, including producing more energy, which I'm strongly for. We talked about that earlier. We need to produce more in this country, but also we can use the energy we have more efficiently. And that combination is a recipe for success because it will help create jobs. It will help ensure that we have a cleaner environment, and it will certainly help to make us less dependent on foreign oil and other forms of energy, which is in our national security interests, as we've seen so poignantly over the last couple of weeks in the Middle East and other dangerous volatile parts of the world where we rely on for our energy. So I thank my colleague from Oklahoma. Look forward to working with him on his amendments when he's able to offer them. And again, I would strongly urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to look carefully at the actual legislation, because there's some information out there that may or may not be accurate in terms of the subsidies or mandates in this legislation. There are no mandates in the private sector, period, and we have deliberately drafted it in that manner. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Madam President.
Senator from Oregon.
Madam President, very briefly, Leader Reid has indicated to me that we continue to look for a way to move forward on the energy efficiency issue, and there may be votes still today, and the leader will have more, certainly, as he has a chance to explore these issues in the afternoon. Thank you. Madam President, the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Alexander. Senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, if we're in a quorum call, I would ask unanimous consent to vitiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I know there's still discussion ongoing, including with the Majority Leader, about moving forward with this bill and with the important no Washington exemption issue. And I just want to encourage that discussion toward a positive resolution and state again that I'm open to multiple ways all of that can be accomplished. And let me specifically address one issue. There's some concern that somehow I'm going to demand multiple votes on this between now and October 1st. What I'm looking for is one vote straight up on this issue between now and October 1st. It can be on this bill, it can be on the CR, but I'm looking for that one vote. Now, if we do have, for instance, an amendment vote on this bill and the issue is added perhaps to the CR from the House and comes over, then I'm sure we'd have to deal with it again, but that would not be of my making or of my demanding. What I'm looking for here in the Senate is simply to lock down and be assured of one fair up or down vote on this crucial issue between now and October 1st. And of course, if this issue persists, I'm sure I'll talk about it and bring it up again, including after October 1st. But that's my goal. There are plenty of different ways to get there, all of which would be consistent with moving forward on energy amendments and moving forward on this bill. So I think there are a lot of reasonable ways to solve this, and I'm open to any and all of them. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I'd suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll. Mr. Alexander.
Madam President, I note the absence of a quorum and ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection. Senator from Vermont.
Thank you. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the pending amendment be set aside so that I may call up my amendment.
Madam President?
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object, Madam President, I would propose an alternative unanimous consent, and I would ask unanimous consent that the pending amendment be set aside and the following amendments be made pending. The Sanders Amendment, Bennett Amendment number 1847, Udall Amendment number 1845, Klobuchar Amendment number 1856, the Franken Amendment number 1855, the Blumenthal Amendment number 1878, and the Vitter Amendment number 1866, and on Tuesday, September 17th, at a time to be determined jointly by the majority and minority leaders, that my amendment number 1866 and a side-by-side amendment on the same subject by the majority leader be made pending and receive 60 minutes of debate, evenly divided and controlled by the majority bill manager and myself, that no points of order be in order in relation to these two amendments, and that upon expiration of the time for debate, without any intervening motions or debate, the Senate then proceed to votes on these two amendments subject to a 60-vote threshold for passage, and that subsequent to each vote, a motion to reconsider each vote be made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection to the modified request?
I object.
Objection is heard to the modified request. Is there objection to the original request?
Madam President, again reserving my right to object, I want to outline another alternative, which I think is a very reasonable path forward on this amendment and on the bill, and that would be, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw the Vitter Amendment, number 1866. And then on Wednesday, September 25th, 2013, at 3 p.m., the Senate discharge the relevant committees from consideration of my bill, the No Exemption for Washington from Obamacare Act, and proceed immediately to the consideration of that bill, and that without any intervening motions or debate, the Senate proceed with 60 minutes of debate on that bill, evenly divided and controlled by the majority leader and myself, that the bill not be subject to any amendments or motions to commit, and then after debate has expired, the bill be engrossed for third reading, read a third time, and the Senate immediately vote on final passage subject to a 60-vote threshold, and that the motion to reconsider be made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection to the modified request?
I object.
Objection is heard. Is there objection to the original request?
Well then, Madam President, I do object sadly that we can't choose such a path forward.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Senator from Vermont.
It is clear that there are differences of opinion in this body, in this country, on how we proceed on energy matters. But I think, and at least I hope, that there is pretty unanimous agreement that energy efficiency makes a whole lot of sense. That at a time when the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory tells us that over half of the total energy produced in the United States is wasted due to inefficiency, I would hope that regardless of one's political perspective, we can all move forward together to create a more energy-efficient society, which will, A, lower the cost of fuel for millions of Americans, B, cut back on greenhouse gas emissions and help us deal with the planetary crisis of global warming, and C, as we make our nation more energy efficient, we can create tens and tens of thousands of jobs. So if there is a win-win-win situation out there, I think that this is it. And I would hope that we could move forward in this area. Madam President, that is why, because of the win-win-win aspect of this bill, I think we should be supporting the Shaheen-Portman bill, which has earned the support from a wide array of senators and organizations from across the political spectrum. And I would think that Senator Shaheen would agree this is a fairly modest bill. It's not transforming the world. But this is a small step forward in doing something that certainly needs to be done and that there should be very little disagreement about. Madam President, as part of this effort, Chairman Wyden and I are proposing what I think is a significant amendment which complements the overall thrust of the bill. And our amendment is called the Residential Energy Savings Act, which in fact is a strong complement to the Shaheen-Portman bill. Our legislation focuses on residential energy efficiency, residential. And we do that because we understand that in Vermont, in Louisiana, in Oregon, all over this country, there are tens of millions of people who understand that they are wasting energy, that when it gets cold, the heat is going through their roofs, through their windows, through their walls. They're wasting money every single day, but they don't have the modest investment that they need to make their homes more energy efficient. And that's the problem Senator Wyden and I are trying to address. We're focusing attention on homeowners all over this country. The Residential Energy Savings Act will save money for homeowners and tenants and cut energy use by lowering the cost of energy efficiency upgrades. It will also create jobs for installers and for the companies that manufacture windows, insulation, and other energy efficiency materials. How does this amendment work? Well, it's pretty simple. This bill makes loans available to states through the State Energy Program of the U.S. Department of Energy to create or expand existing financing programs. This provides homeowners and tenants with access to low-cost, consumer-friendly capital for energy efficiency projects. Homeowners and tenants use the funding to invest in energy efficiency, and here is the exciting part of this concept. They pay back the loans through their energy savings, and the U.S. Treasury gets the money back. In other words, we lend somebody $15,000 to make their home more energy efficient. They save $1,000 a year. They pay back the loan by those savings in their fuel bill. So at the end of the day, for 15 years in that example, they're not paying any more for fuel, but on the 16th year they're going to see significant savings in their bill, and throughout the process we see significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and in addition we have created jobs in a number of the areas, the installers and those people who manufacture energy efficient products. Key features of this amendment introduced by Senator Wyden and myself are that it is technology neutral. People will make their own choices about how they want to go forward. This amendment provides states with a high level of flexibility to support existing state and local programs or to design new financing programs that best fit their own circumstances and need. This amendment supports effective existing state and local programs and supports innovations designed to improve energy efficiency financing. There are no mandates. Participation is entirely voluntary. The Department of Energy must consider regional diversity in issuing loans. This amendment encourages public-private partnerships and other strategies for leveraging public dollars. This bill incorporates annual reporting requirements to ensure accountability and provides valuable data to consumers, state and local governments, lenders, utilities, and the real estate industry about financing efficiency upgrades. The Residential Energy Savings Amendment is complementary to energy efficiency proposals by other senators. Supporters of this amendment include the Alliance to Save Energy, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, the American Institute of Architects, Efficiency First, the National Association of State Energy Officials. Residential energy efficiency, helping homeowners save energy and money while creating jobs at the same time, is an approach that is enjoyed by people all over the country. Let me just reiterate what the bottom line is. This is a very, very simple concept. Federal government lends money to the states to be repaid back in full. So this is not an expense for the federal government. There will be an administrative cost. But we think at the end of the day, there will be $1 billion of effort in making residential homes more energy efficient. And I know that in Vermont, I mean, people, you don't have to be a genius to know, or an economist to know that it is pretty stupid to be heating your home in the wintertime and seeing that heat go out of the window or the roof or the walls. And in Vermont, and I'm sure all over this country, we have a lot of older homes. They're wasting a lot of energy. People are spending much more money than they should. I will never forget doing an event with two sisters from Barre, Vermont, who are in their 80s. And the state put forth a weatherization program. They reduced the cost of their fuel bill by something like 50%. Their home was much more comfortable. That's what we should be doing all over this country. But working families and middle-class families in many ways can't come up with that $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 that they need in order to make that happen. So this bill gets money to the states give it to the homeowners repay it based on the reductions in fuel bills. Federal government gets their money back. We create jobs. We cut greenhouse gas emissions. We save consumers huge sums of money. So if this is not a win-win-win situation, I am not sure what is. I want to thank Senator Wyden for his hard work on this amendment, and we look forward to working with my colleagues to see that it gets passed. Madam President, thanks very much.
The Senator from Oregon.
Madam President, I'm going to be